Broadway Bullet Volume 814. Want to produce? Are you wondering what a producer has to do or curious about producing yourself? We've got an episode chock full of interviews of interest to you. Cara, Reichel, and Peter Mills talk about their production company, Prospect Theater Company, their fantastic growth, and areas you need to look out for when creating a company. Seth Sklar-Hein discusses his job producing and associate directing for Cameron Mackintosh North America, as well as his working relationship with arguably the most successful producer of the modern theater. Ralph Lewis of Peculiar Works talks about dusting off the forgotten American classic, Androbourous, and the challenges and joys of producing site-specific theater. Peter Bogyo, general manager for too many Broadway shows to mention, talks about his numerous duties and his new book, aptly titled Broadway General Manager. Finally, Eleanor Speart, buyer for the Drama Bookshop, comes in to talk about the resources they provide everyone in celebration of 100 years of doing business. She also talks about writing your book, because face it, you know you want to write one. All of this after this. All right, this is Michael Gilbo with Broadway Bullet, and I just want to let you guys know that we are now starting to put up new episodes on YouTube as well, for those people who just like to listen to audio on YouTube or find it easier. But in any case, it really helps if you can help get the word out. So whatever platform you're listening on, if you can like, share, subscribe, pre-podcast, it would really help. Tell people about us. Leave a comment. SoundCloud allows it. YouTube allows it. So give us a review on iTunes. All right. A couple quick notes before we jump into this episode. Again, I want to remind people, if you are a composer-lyricist or a playwright, or you know one, we are working on organizing a playwright's monologue showcase and a composer's song showcase to also video for YouTube content and to put the music up on in these episodes. That's going to be, the composer showcase is going to be on Sunday, May 6th, and the writer's one is going to be Friday evening, May 11th. So if you know somebody who should be in on this, drop me an email at broadwaybulletnyc@gmail.com. Also, we are still recruiting for our freshman class for our brand new program in Theater and Business Management at the University of Providence. It's a really unique program. We teach you how to be a businessman that the artist has to be, and we really have a focus on you guys creating your own work, because if there's one thing I hear over and over talking to all these people is you need to be creating your own work. So we're going to help you do that and foster that. All right, for more information, we have a link at broadwaybullet.com to check that out.
Special thanks to our location sponsor.
Writers need a full community of support in order to do their important work. That's where DGF steps in. The Dramatists Guild Foundation is a national charity that fuels the future of American theater by supporting playwrights, composers, lyricists, and book writers at all stages of their careers. They do this by sponsoring educational programs, providing emergency aid to writers in need, and offering a free rehearsal space where I've recorded this episode. For any questions about how DGF might be able to help you, please visit dgf.org.
Special thanks to our travel sponsor.
I'd like to thank my school, the University of Providence. They are our travel sponsor. They pay for me to get there, as well as a student to come help out and meet all these people and stay there. And this is all because it relates to the program that I created. It's the School of Theater and Business Arts. You learn the art of being an artist and the business of being an artist. because it is important. If you hear anything in this show, it's that these artists have to treat themselves as an entrepreneurial business. And you learn how to do that, as well as your art, at the University of Providence. Check us out. There's a link at BroadwayBullet.com. And if you are a senior or junior, come on out and visit us. We'd love to see you. So if you're liking what you're hearing from anybody you hear on this episode or any of our recent episodes, we have the full unedited interviews also available at SoundCloud. They're also on the show notes page at Broadway Bullet. The feed was getting a little cluttered with all that for the podcast itself. So what we are doing is we are putting them up just for the first week in the podcast. So if you're there, you can get them quick through there. Otherwise, they're all still up. Just go to BroadwayBullet.com, search for the show, or go to SoundCloud.com/Broadway-Bullet and search for the episode you're looking for. Because I guarantee you, everyone we're speaking to on this episode has a lot more to say on a lot of different topics. So it's my way of providing a way for you guys to go a little deeper into those areas that specifically interest you. All right, let's get rolling.
In the best of company.
One great thing about this podcast for me is I get a chance to sometimes make good friends in the course of these interviews. And I've got back here with me two old friends who I've talked to and worked with in different capacities, Cara, Reichel, and Pete Mills. How you guys doing?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Glad to be back.
And we're going to talk about a lot of things, but I know one of the biggest things I'm here to help you guys celebrate, because I know how hard you work with your theater company, is that you've now landed a 3-year residency with 59 East 59
yes,
theaters.
59 59 theaters, which is at 59 East 59th Street.
Imagine that.
Yeah, it's a great venue. They have 3 different theaters in their building, and we've done a number of shows there in their 99-seat theater over the years. And
Golden Boy the Blue Ridge?
Yeah, including our show Golden Boy the Blue Ridge.
Theater B?
Yeah, but we are moving up to Theater A, which is the 199-seat theater. So we're going to be there each fall for the next 3 years.
Twice as big as anything we've ever done.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's really exciting. And I know, the company has been, I feel like before I left, there was a big 10th anniversary celebration. So that means we're heading into at least 18 years. So how long?
There's different ways of doing the math.
We are considering the 18-19 season to be our 20th anniversary because we actually were legally founded in 1998. But we didn't do our first show until 1999. So
spanning that season, somewhere in there we turned 20.
We're basically going into our 19th year of operations right now, and next year will be the 20th. So this residency is sort of a great milestone and stepping stone for us as we sort of move up to the next notch of off-Broadway.
And not only does Pete put on a lot of shows with Prospect, but you've also launched... You've also been kind of the first one on many different writers' careers for putting up their shows. Do you want to give us a quick little name drop, crunch the floor, some of the...
I think, with Ryan Scott Oliver, was that his first New York?
Yeah, we've sort of found our niche in terms of offering sort of the first New York premiere of work. We did Jasper and Deadland, which was Ryan Scott Oliver's first production.
Unlocked, Conner and Gregor.
Which is Conner and Gregor. We're doing The Mad Ones by Kerrigan and Loudermilk. We did Tomorrow of the River, which also has a cast album out, which was Marissa Michelson and Josh Cohen. We did the New York premiere of Long Story Short by Brendan Milburn and Valerie Vagoda. So, the company really started as a way for Pete and myself and some of the other founding artists to create an artistic home for our own creative development work. But we found that the way that we can serve the New York City and the musical theater community is by providing a place for a lot of different emerging writers and emerging artists creating exciting new work.
And early on, we produced all kinds of things, but our mission gradually became focused on new musicals because that seemed to be where the most excitement was. And it sort of came to us that this was our mission to do new musicals.
So I'm guessing with your progression of Prospect that you have a lot of advice for people who might be thinking of getting their own company together or in the early stages of the company and wondering how to move it up to the next step. So I'm kind of curious some of your nuggets you've picked up, mistakes you've made, wonderful discoveries that you found to move things along.
I think this is a Cara question.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, one thing, because people do ask me this a lot.
Yeah.
And,
so now you can tell them to come listen to the podcast.
Yes. I think, well, one of the things because a lot of people found theater companies, they're college friends or they study theater together in grad school, and they come to New York and they start a company. And, a lot of times it's actors who want to create shows together.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons that Prospect has succeeded and lasted is that we weren't just an ensemble of actors. We were, the initial artists who founded Prospect. Amongst us there was a writer, a director, a manager, someone who was specifically interested in theater management and got a master's degree in theater management at Yale, a technical person, and a marketing person. So like the company, we definitely went into it with a long-term view, but it wasn't necessarily about just serving any one person's, artistic, creative push. It was more about creating a community and a place that a lot of people could work. So I think one of the things that has sustained us is that we, from the beginning, involved a lot of different artistic voices. And so if there were times, I look back at the history now, and there are definitely cycles where I can go like, oh, that was this era of Prospect, And I think the other thing that I think is really a good piece of advice for anyone who wants to start a company is not to feel like you have to get stuck in any one mold. Because, we've gone through a lot of changes over the past couple of years, and we're even changing into this new residency now. And just knowing that if you're going to grow and evolve as a human being, your company and your artwork is also going to change. So I think that there have been moments where we sort of, locked into like, oh, this is how the company works. This is who we are. This is what we do. And then something, sometimes internally, sometimes externally, has shifted. The economic downturn in the 2009 year was a huge thing. And I think if we hadn't, gone back to like, why are we doing this and what do we want to do now that there are new circumstances? Like, if it had only been about like sticking to a formula, then we probably would have just quit. But the fact that we had a clear mission and we could sort of evolve what we were doing to continue serving the mission, even though maybe what we were doing was slightly different. So
I do. That is an important thing. I've heard that several times.
Flexibility.
When you write, flexibility, and when you write your mission statement, to leave a little wiggle room in it, not make it so specific that it can't. That the programming can't
evolve. And your mission
evolve.
statement, you can re-examine it and like change the language as your company grows. I mean, I know the first draft of our mission statement when we had just graduated college was like extremely academic and very like, I don't know, I think a little more heady than
we
our
were doing a lot of like German plays at that point. We did like Danton's Death and Manest Man.
At the beginning we did a lot of classic plays and a lot of, and we did a couple new plays, and then we just realized that like the things that we were having the most success with and that people seemed to need the most in terms of the New York theater community were producing new musicals. And so then about 5 or 6 years into the company's lifespan, we decided, hey, it seems like the musicals thing is what people really need support for and are interested to come see. So let's work more on that. And anyway, so I think just having a clear guiding reason why you're doing what you're doing and not being afraid to let how you're doing that and how you're serving that mission change. If you don't have as much money or you have more money, and also allowing people flexibility. So I think that people have to be able to come and go, right? Yeah. Like doing a certain thing at a certain point in time might be really useful for someone's career, but then they may need to step away and focus on something else. But that doesn't mean that they can like no longer be a part of the group, right? So having a kind of open community and a flexibility, I think, is what's been the key to our survival. And also that the company was sort of formed with some really strong personal relationships at the center. Yeah. So we're all still friends as well as colleagues.
Well, it is exciting that you get to do so much work with new musicals, because I think part of the reason there's such demand for it, as you're talking, is the economics of doing musicals in a small independent theater are not good.
No.
From what I understand, for the most part, independent theater, the 99-seat houses are on a model of how little can we lose, not how much can we make.
Oh, yeah.
And so with a musical, that how little we can lose is a much greater number, because the seats are still fixed and there's more people, and it's just a bigger cost. So how does that work for you? How hard is it to keep going and producing such wonderful? Because you serve a vital force here in this town, giving productions to. Yeah,
I think that is
artists.
actually, I was thinking about this morning because we really need to. I think there's a hugely robust community of people making musicals, and there are very limited opportunities for those people to actually see their shows produced. And I actually had a very frustrating conversation with a large foundation last week, because I had written a grant proposal to asking for a substantial amount of money. This was a foundation specifically targeted towards supporting early career artists. And, the feedback I got was like, oh, your application isn't eligible because it looks like your artists are too advanced. And we had this back and forth, and they were like, well, it says this one project you're looking at doing, the writer's been working on it for 6 years already. That doesn't really seem to be new. And I'm like, you have no clue how long it takes to put a piece together and to raise the money.
And there is a no man's land in producing, where you can put on a showcase. There's kind of a model that works for putting on an equity showcase. But then when you get into this middle area where you're on different contracts with the union, it's still really expensive for a company like Prospect to produce at that level, and yet you're not one of those big institutional theaters that has their millions coming in from who knows where.
Yet.
I mean, we've always just found a way, and I do think as we get bigger, it is harder to find the resources to do those full productions, because we used to be able to do a great equity showcase production for $75,000, and now a small cast off-Broadway production is $300,000. So it's just a much different scale of the amount of money. And yes, you're maybe making more at the box office, but the whole thing is going up. You're still needing to raise even more money. So I hope that as we grow and continue to bring in more audiences, I mean, this is coming back to the residency at 59 East 59th, the opportunity, we're going to have literally almost 3 times as many seats to sell for our production. So that's not only great because more people can see the work, but I think, what I was saying about having a large community, not only of artists, but audiences and supporters, donors is really important. So where we are right now is we really need to find that next group of funders who can come in and back us. And the one of the things
anybody listening out there,
exactly.
And, we also have to figure out what a lot of other. I will say it is hard for theaters to do musicals no matter what their size, just because you need more things. You need to hire more people, and so the budgets are bigger, and you're not necessarily going to charge. You might charge a little bit more at the box office, but not twice as much, right? Yeah. So I think figuring out a lot of other nonprofits that are larger have gone to sort of commercial enhancement partnerships, and I have some mixed feelings about that, because while I see it as great when 2 people can come together and share resources on a project, there's also there is a very different idea of why you're putting money into something, and a commercial theater implies you want to make money off of it. So there's a whole different agenda that comes into the artistic process, and I've been thinking a lot about what are there innovative business models and things that we can tap into to develop a sort of an ongoing fund to actually produce new work, because there are so many shows that deserve to be produced, and it's just tough. So but we're going to keep doing it. Yeah.
All right, well, do you have any other shots you'd like to get out before we wrap this one up? And
oh gosh,
we missed out of all the
we determined that I don't need to plug the Honeymooners because this will be out after.
Or maybe Adam might be coming back someplace.
Yes.
Maybe with any luck.
Always possible. It's always possible.
Yes. No, this is great, and you know, we hope to keep in dialogue with you and with everyone, and visit prospecttheater.org, and you'll always know what's up next on the boards for Prospect. So.
Yeah, prospecttheater.org, pcmills.com to
Yep.
check out some great musicals for your companies out there.
Buy some sheet music.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got some great songs for auditions, great songs
Yes.
for shows. If people are doing theater's doing a cabaret night, like the Cleveland Award winner, proven really not much longer, but a real hidden gem that I have been pleased. I'm pleased to see both of your stars rising. It takes a lot of persistence. I think people just need to remember that it takes.
Yeah, that's another thing about running a theater company. Just determination and keeping at it.
Well, it's paid off.
Yes,
Thank you guys so much for coming in. We'll
Thank you.
check in again
Thanks
soon.
for having us.
Yeah.
Listening Room.
So, one of my favorite musicals of all time has come back to Broadway, Once on This Island, and the cast album has just been released by Broadway Records. So, I thought I'd celebrate a little bit by sharing with you, maybe those of you who haven't heard it yet, Lea Salonga's version of the wonderful song, The Human Heart. And be sure to catch Once on This Island on Broadway. Not only is it one of my favorite shows of all time, but it's being produced by one of my favorite producers of all time, Ken Davenport, who you might have met and heard a little bit on this program. All right, here is Human Heart from Once on This Island.
Cameron is equally as involved, if not more so, on a daily basis, from the top down.
Well, you talk about the detail and is looking at the way things are lit and stuff, and actually it occurs to me, I mean, obviously he's definitely one of the most successful producers of all time, but beyond that, one thing I think he has to be most noted for in a weird way is all his shows have probably the most iconic logos of any... Yeah. How does he do it, or have you learned anything from him? What's his eye, what's his touch for coming up with
Yeah, I've asked him once
logos
about photography and artwork, and it's interesting because he says more often than not, and this goes across the board for his sort of editorial eye, he doesn't really go in with a brief. He doesn't go in with a plan. He lets the talented people he hires to fulfill the project deliver something, and then he can respond. And a lot of it is just gut instinct of what looks like the right photograph. And photography has changed over the years. It's fascinating to look at photos from the beginning of the Phantom Run, which are so dark and blurry, versus now, which are so crisp, and the lighting is done in a completely different way, and how everyone's eye has adjusted to sort of demanding that. You could never get away with the previous. But the branding has changed as well. I mean, you go back to the original Phantom Mask, and it was sort of it had curvatures to the side, it sort of ombreed out a little bit, it was always against the black, but there was something murky about it. It didn't just pop in the same way that it's clearer now and has dimension now, and it's always, I've learned it, I think, on Les Mis with Cosette, because I get obsessed with how Cosette looks on a piece of advertising. And every time the production launches somewhere, or even within the run, like we did this on Les Mis when it was running on Broadway most recently, the look of the art changes in a way. You try a new type of campaign, you put it on a white background, you change the color, you shift what colors are in her hair and all of that. And I get obsessed with the consistency of that and making sure that it's right for that moment. And then something will happen.
Because, oh no, Cameron will do
That's the thing. That's the thing. I wake up every day in complete and utter fear. Like, let's just get that out there right now, right? What makes me do what I do on a daily basis? Abject fear. The men that I work for, mostly men at this point, that I work for, I'd work for women if they hire me. The men that I work for right now.
I don't blame you. I'm just saying
I know.
This industry has a bit of a problem.
And the generation of men that I work for come from a generation where and especially at that time, you know, you think it back to the producing time of the 80s and the 70s, and you think Liz McCann was around. You know, Liz McCann was putting things out there, and there weren't a lot of women in that circle, in that world. There's a wonderful picture, I think it was a great photograph.
Pick
of the
up the
Wings,
cast
Angels in
album
America,
for the
where
new
Liz
Broadway
McCann was
cast
sitting there
of
with
Once
Jerry
on This
Schoenfeld
Island.
and
It's out
others,
on
and you
Broadway
think,
Records,
God,
and
she was strong.
I just saw the news today
Still
that
is.
they are sending this show out
So,
on tour.
with Cameron, there is that
2019,
fear of wanting
so
it to be right.
Be on the
You know,
lookout for that.
I will.
And hey, maybe we'll get
As
lucky
with
and Ken
all
will
the
let me,
folks I think
talk
that
to
work
some
in
people
the
with,
organization,
Once on
we
This
just
Island
know
when
that the
I'm back in
standard
New York.
is extremely high. You know, I walk by. Kim, I'm going to say this. I walk
Up
by
close.
the August Wilson
A couple
Theater.
episodes ago, I believe it was
And
episode
whatever
812, we
they
talked
did
with
when
Seth
they upgraded the
Sklar-Hein, who
lighting
was
within
telling
the
us about
marquees and the
new
vertical
road
plastic
tour
at
of
the
Phantom of
August
the
Wilson
Opera
Theater,
and his job
color
as,
temperature.
Make sure you say that
Cameron
name a
Mackintosh
couple
North
times.
America. Well, I split
color
that interview
temperature
and saved a portion of this, so we're
of
kind of jumping
the
into
lighting
the middle
in the
of his
marquee on the
interview.
awning
And don't forget the
versus
entire
the color
unedited
temperature
things there.
of the
He's got
lighting
so
in
much
the
to say.
vertical
But
is
here
different.
We're continuing with
So the
Seth
pink
Sklar-Hein.
for Mean Girls, like the white for Groundhog Day, on the vertical reads more orange. The pink isn't as exact. And I just know that if that were my front of house, I would be in trouble. It just didn't look right. It doesn't look right. And that's fine, you know. But as the ad agencies that I work with here in town know, even with Cameron an ocean away, even with his expectations and his eyes an ocean away, I will go to King Display and have lightbox tests with plastics over and over and over again until I feel it's right. I feel it's my responsibility to take responsibility for whatever we put out there. And the buck stops with me, so that when Cameron or Andrew or Hal or any of these other creators show up and see something, they can only point a finger at me. Like, I'll take it. But you get the best of both worlds that way. You get crushed, but then you also are lifted up and appreciated for doing that work. And that's how I create a baseline with all the different organizations that we work with. I try to be present for as much as possible. We were just having a conversation yesterday about a photo shoot for this Phantom tour. We have a new Phantom coming into the tour late December of this year, and we need to do photos and get things for press and for brochures and things like that. And we were looking at all these dates because we have a photographer, Matt Murphy, that we work with pretty regularly, and we're very connected with him, and he knows how we operate, and he knows how the productions operate, and he takes beautiful work. And now that he's seeing the show over and over again, it's fun to go in and say, try something different. Yeah. Because always you can surprise Cameron with new images or a new angle, and if the picture's great, we'll use it, even if it is a picture we've never used before. There's precedent, but there's also no rules. We were looking at dates for photographs, and Jenny, who's our press rep for the Phantom Tour, said, well, you know, I could be there, and I could run the shoot with Matt. And I said, yeah, but I don't trust you. And she said, yeah, I know. And it isn't that I don't trust her. They could absolutely, I've learned this as an associate director. You know, I go and I watched Miss Saigon last night. Me being at Miss Saigon last night didn't change the show. I'd be fooling myself to think that everyone on that stage was thinking, oh God, Seth's watching. Let's make sure we do certain things. No, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It might happen when the others are in the building. But even then, I think when Hal Prince comes into Phantom Broadway or Lawrence Connor comes out to the Phantom Tour, I think after the first 10 minutes, the cast just sort of gets in their groove and does their thing. I don't think that they carry the shadow of the presence, if you will, of him with a capital H in the building. So I know that when I am in the building, I'm there to observe what they're doing. I don't think they're necessarily serving it up for me, and I have to sort of let that go, that I don't have any control. So whether or not I'm there sometimes, you think, well, why would I even go? It's not going to affect the show, but I do need to see it. Same thing with a photo shoot. He's going to shoot the photos. He's going to take the pictures. I'm not looking through the lens. And we have a relationship where I don't look through the lens, and we don't look at photos on a computer as we're going. He captures action when we run the show. and then we look at it later. And we will look at it later after he's culled through and taken out anything he doesn't want us to see. So there's a process. But in being there, if there's a moment where I'm watching and I see something on stage and I go, that's not true. That's not true to what we do. I feel like it's my responsibility with my eye to raise my hand and say, no, 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 we have to do that again. You're either playing for the camera or you're not doing enough to be read by the camera from past experience. So I try to think that I have a purpose, but it's
purpose.
Yeah,
I'm having a cue.
But it is, Cameron. It's been fascinating learning from him because he is a director. Now, anyone who works with me who's just heard that's going to roll their eyes. But he is a director, and he is a lighting designer, and he is a scenic designer, and he has an eye for all of it. And if I've learned anything, or if I needed to describe what I do on a daily basis in the shortest way possible, which I failed at miserably, I would say that I'm
You were still at the intro.
Yeah, I'm the artistic director for his building, and his building is all the shows here. So an artistic director, as I learned from others that I've worked for, like Michael Grandage, an artistic director has their hand and eye on everything. And from a creative standpoint, aware of the finances, aware of what's needed to make the show function as a commercial entity and turn a profit, hopefully. But from the profit can't come unless the art is right. And that means for the packaging of the show, but also for what we see on stage. So that's how I fill my day.
In the best of company.
I had a really unique theater experience. Company that does work on site, site-specific work, which is I think, an earlier cousin to all this immersive work. And Androbourous is the oldest surviving American play, written 300 years ago, and I got a chance to watch it being performed by a talented group of actors in a building that is 300 years old, in the neighborhood that the play was originally set. A wonderful experience. And we have the director for Androbourous here to talk about site-specific work, his company, and all of that goodness. Ralph Lewis, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
So I guess the first thing, tell us a little bit about what attracts you to a play for your company, and like why did you choose Androbourous specifically as a...
Well, my partners and I, Barry and Catherine and myself, we met as actors.
What's the company's name again?
It's called Peculiar Works Project. Right. Yeah. And when we sort of went out on our own, it was a time when we were acting, and we had performed with a group called On Guard Arts, which did site-specific work. And so we just thought their work was incredible, and we wanted to go out and do something like what they were doing. And at the time, there was a lot of vacant space in New York City, empty buildings, especially down in the lower part of Manhattan. And it seems like the moment after we started the company, the whole real estate market changed, and it was very different. And it forced us to find different kinds of spaces. But we thought site-specific work would be a good way for us to tell stories live on stage in different ways and in different places that would give audiences a different experience than just going into some black box and seeing something in front of black velvet curtains. And so, yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And sometimes, you know, I long for those days, you know, when we do a show, we don't just build the sets and hang the lights. We build the backstage. We build the box office. We build the lobby. You know, we build the audience seating risers. So it's a lot more work than just doing your normal production in a theater. But since, you know, we've done so many different kinds of shows over our 24 years, and sometimes they're immersive, sometimes they're interactive, sometimes they're promenade, and the audience just follows down a street or through a building, seeing different parts of a piece. So we've done a lot of different types of site-specific work. It's not just one thing. But for this piece, which is sort of a traditional play in many ways, we thought we needed a space that would somehow bring out the history of it. And my day job just happens to be down in that area. And one day on my lunch hour, I thought, hey, that restaurant across the street, I should see if they have like a banquet room in the back or something. And the hostess at the desk said, oh, I think you want the museum upstairs. I'm like, there's a museum upstairs? And I was like amazed that there's, 3 floors of this museum. We went in, we pitched the project, and they were very open to it. They've been lovely hosts for us. But just the idea of having the audience walk through like 3 different rooms of period artifacts, tables, chairs, forks, knives, plates, paintings, all sorts of stuff that were actually created about the same time the play was being written. It just seemed like a terrific match, and it's really turned out great for us. So we've really enjoyed that.
So when picking something like Androbourous or others and you're doing site-specific work, I guess my wondering is, kind of the chicken or the egg scenario. Do you look for the sites and then try to find a piece that works with that site, or do you find a piece and then search for the site for the piece?
It is very much a chicken and egg thing. And sometimes it's the chicken and sometimes it's the egg. It really does vary. We do a lot of new plays, and we also adapt, classical pieces. The newer plays, sometimes they take longer to develop, whereas the classical piece, you kind of have the text of what you're going to work with. Yeah, in this particular, we did a workshop of this piece last November, just the weekend before the election, and we actually did it in a boxing ring in Greenwich Village. And that was very cool, very contemporary staging, whereas this, we've gone back to the origins of the play. So it's a completely different experience. What had really happened, if I can tell you how I found this play, my best friend gave me a book for a birthday gift. And this book is called Before and Behind the Curtain by William Northall. I highly recommend the book. It was written in 1853, and it's all about what was going on with theater at that time. And basically, it was between City Hall Park and Astor Place. That's where the theaters were along Broadway and the Bowery. Well, I was bragging to someone about this book, and they said, hey, would you like to do a book talk of it? So I was like, sure. And so I do this sort of TED talk about these early theaters, and it gave me an opportunity to go back and say, well, what were the first theaters in New York and in America? What were the first plays? Actually, I think the oldest play that I could find is something called Ye Cub, Ye Bear, that was performed in the Williamsburg colony.
Was that the original Gay Pride show?
It sounds like it. And actually, we would never know that this play existed were it not for the fact that the actors were arrested and put on trial, and the judge had them perform the play at the trial, and the judge said it was just so bad he dismissed the case and the guys were exonerated. But after that, the sort of oldest surviving play that we have in America is Androbourous. And I was surprised to see that it had never been performed before, that I could find any record of. So we're like, well, we got to do this. And then, of course, you start reading the play and realize it's that old English, and it's really hard to read the original, and maybe that's why it's never been done. But my dramaturg, Barbara Yoshida, and I, we just spent a year before the workshop and then the year after the workshop just changing words, not changing plot or character, things like that, but just making it more understandable for an audience today. And really, if you've read some of the early American plays, it's a lot of religious pageant plays. It's a lot of melodrama. America invented the melodrama, which with television we don't really need on the theater quite as much. We need plays with ideas. And this play had such a great idea. It was written by the colonial governor at the time, Robert Hunter, after he had left office. He had been brought from Britain to rule the New York colony at a very delicate time, and the Assembly just wanted to have nothing to do with him. And they just would not pass any of his laws. They would not go along with anything he wanted to do. And really, this was America's first gridlock. I mean, you think politics is bad today? It's always been bad. And this play is a great example of that. So he wrote this play to sort of vent his frustrations with the experiences that he had. And all of the characters in the play are based on real factual people in history. The villain of the play is based on Reverend Vesey, which Vesey Street down at the World Trade Center is named for. He was the head of Trinity Church at the time. And the play is based on an event that took place at the church, which is now known as the vestment scandal of 1714, where someone broke into the church and urinated and defecated on the sacred robes of the church. And the reverend, he wanted this governor, Robert Hunter, to find out who the heck did this. Well, decades later, we learned the reverend actually did it to try to set up the governor for failure. And so this is sort of the plot that he then wrote the play about after he left office.
So have you thought at all about, now that you've done all this work with your dramaturg and made this play more adaptable and you said easier to speak and some of the words of publishing or putting this text out for other groups to look at?
Well, definitely. I mean, I think one of the things we've talked a lot about over the past couple of months is what is the American canon of classical theater? You know, I mean, when you see all these great classical theaters in the United States, the majority of the work they do is by some British guy named William Shake something.
Yeah, and something that'll come to me.
Yeah. So what are the classical plays of America's history? And we're really hoping that maybe we can be just some small part of reintroducing this play into the American canon. And we would love to find ways to connect it with other theaters around the United States in the years to come. So even though we're going to wrap up the production this weekend, we are very interested and excited about the possibilities of what we can do with it in the future. And hopefully, you know, students who study the history of theater and stumble across this play and try to figure out where it fits in, maybe they'll want to do productions of it as well, because it's really funny. I mean, it's a farce. It's highly influenced on the Commedia dell'arte that was popular in Europe at the time. But the writer Robert Hunter was also a contemporary of Jonathan Swift, who wrote Gulliver's Travels. So he was a writer. This wasn't just a politician who decided, I'm going to jot something down. He was a fine writer of his time, and you know, so it has kind of an Elizabethan restoration feel to the text, but the plot is very slapstick, farce, fun stuff.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
Well, Ralph Lewis, it's been a pleasure chatting with you about Androbourous and Peculiar Theater Works, and now that'll go again, site-specific works. Like I said, I think more people need to look outside the boundaries of of the proscenium wall for where theater and art can happen. So I'm glad you guys are doing that.
Thank you.
And best of luck with your future endeavors.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
Listening Room.
The Band's Visit is a new show on Broadway this season. It's been out for a little while, and so has the cast album. But I guess this episode I featured another show that's existing, so I figured I'd do another one. And I just love David Yazbek, so I was really excited to listen to this cast album. David Yazbek, for those of you who don't know, wrote The Full Monty and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, two of the most fun, clever musicals, I think, of the past 20 years. And it's great to see that he's back with The Band's Visit. And here is Omar Sharif. The cast album is out on Shikaboom Ghostlight and available all sorts of places, digital stores, etc. Go check it out. Here's Omar Sharif.
Kulthum and Omar Sharif came floating on a jasmine wind from the west, from the south, honey in my ear, spice in my mouth, dark and thrilling, strange and sweet, Cleopatra and the handsome thief, and they floated in on a jasmine wind, Kulthum and Omar Sharif, and they floated in on a jasmine wind.
Book drop.
Peter Bogyo has had a storied career. I think storied is a good word since he just put out a book on what he's learned as the Broadway General Manager, demystifying the most important and least understood role in show business. And I think that's an adequate take. And I love getting people who are behind the scenes on here. The program I founded at the University of Providence is Theater and Business Arts, which is that even for artists, it's they have to learn and understand that they're a business.
They're part of the business, absolutely.
Well, they are a business themselves. Their career is a business. So I always like hitting different areas too, but where they can go just being an actor. So, what inspired you to write this book? What is your elevator pitch?
Well, thank you. I am a Broadway General Manager, so I'm writing about something I know very well. I think I was largely motivated out of self-defense. I have friends who've known me for 30 years, and they still have no idea what I do, and they still introduce me to people as a stage manager, no, a company manager, no, a production manager, no. So I really felt that this terribly important and complex position of a general manager to people outside the industry,
and even to people inside the industry,
well,
a lot that don't know what you're...
A lot. I mean, unless you're sitting at my elbow in my office 10 hours a day, it's hard to know all that a general manager does. But I really felt that this position needed to be demystified. I chose that word very carefully, and I hope that my book, Broadway General Manager, will accomplish that.
So what are some of the shows that you've worked on first before we talk about the book?
Oh,
and what people should
I worked on, I've primarily done plays, which I'm very drawn to. I did the recent revival of Love Letters with Mia Farrow and Brian Dennehy as one cast. Brian Dennehy, who liked it so much, he said, sign me up again, and Carol Burnett, Alan Alda, and Candice Bergen. So Love Letters. I did the revival of The Trip to Bountiful with Miss Cicely Tyson, for which she won a Tony Award. I have done Sly Fox with Richard Dreyfuss on Broadway, A Moon for the Misbegotten with Kevin Spacey. Lots.
Well, so we also got to, somewhere in this interview, get to talking about what has changed in production, because I know that the play, from we were talking about, that you've seen the move from more open-ended runs or commercial runs to the 13-week limited engagement. We gotta.
Yeah, that's really a business plan meant to focus the ticket buyer on. This is not going to be around for long. I really have to plan to see it now, rather than that's something I'd love to see one day, but let me see a musical first.
I mean, does it happen that much that is it really just more the marketing ploy to get the folks and get them in there than this idea that we've got to profit and do a run in 13 weeks? Well,
the other part of it, of course, is that it's a great help to sell tickets if you have a big star, a film star, let's say, or television star, and their schedules are such that they really rarely can give you more than that. So it's a combination of they can't give you more than 12 weeks or 16 weeks, and you can sort of make lemonade out of that lemon fact and use it to really focus people on seeing your show immediately.
So with the demystifying the process, what would you say is the most misunderstood or the thing people most don't know that you actually do?
I think it's the entire job. There's not one aspect of it. I'm basically, I sometimes say in show business, I'm the business half. So I'm the producer's right-hand person for all things business and financial related, but with a heavy emphasis on financial. Anything that has a cost implication, that needs to be quantified, that needs to be forecast, the producer looks to me. The first thing I do is I budget the show. The producer doesn't know how much money they're going to have to raise. They have sort of a ballpark.
How
if
do
they're
you
savvy.
budget a show when theaters are booked way in advance and you have to shuffle and you don't know when a theater's going to open? And I would imagine the theater itself changes the budget immensely. And if you're not raising money with investors beforehand, how do you even... I'm guessing this is some of what you speak to?
Yeah, it is tricky. You learn very early on that it's very important that any budget draft that goes out has the word estimated on it. And as we like to say, it's a living, breathing document. So you originally ask questions of your producer and hopefully your director if that person has already been identified. And you make assumptions. I always have an assumption column on my budget. It's not just numbers, but next to the numbers I say, supposes that, and then state something. Supposes that the understudies are not going to be asked to begin work until the third week of rehearsal, for example. And then as things change, you update, you give your budget draft one higher number. It's no longer the first draft, it's the second draft, or it's the 25th draft. And as you get new information that affects the dollars and cents, you incorporate that and try to make the assumptions clear so everyone knows, oh, okay, well, gee, that assumption is no longer true. That's going to have to adjust.
How much do budgets change based on the theater or the season or when it opens, especially with plays, because you're talking about usually a shorter run?
Interestingly, the theater itself doesn't have a huge variable cost impact. One might think it does, but Broadway theaters basically are in two categories. Play houses, which tend to be close to 1,000 seats, with a few exceptions, but on the whole, they're about 1,000 seats. And then there are musical houses, which are bigger, because musicals tend to be bigger, have more people employed. They have an orchestra. They have dancers. They often have more scenery. So they need more seats to generate more money to cover their higher costs. So within those two categories, there's not a huge variance in what a playhouse will cost you. And you have to be careful because sometimes the only theater that's available as all the elements are coming together for your show and you really need to go forward or you're going to lose a key person is a house that may be too big. You don't really want to put a play in a musical house unless it happens to be a play that feels like a musical. And by that I mean something like War Horse, which is very theatrical, and there's something slightly bigger about it than just a play that's set in a kitchen. So it really is important, to the extent you have any control over it, to try to get the right theater for your play. But sometimes you got to take what's available and make the most of it.
What is the most important thing? There have been a few plays recently that have managed to not just do the limited run engagement, but continue running for a year or two or more. Obviously, creatively, there's different things, but on a financial level, do you sense different things that have been what has allowed those plays to run on a financial budgeting system versus another?
Well, those are the wonderful, rare exceptions, a play that really is able to run a year or more. And I would say it's very helpful if there's something so special about the play itself that the play becomes the star, and it's not really important to the public who's in it. I'm going to go back to War Horse. It had a wonderful original cast and a terrific young actor who won the Tony Award playing the autistic child who goes on this journey. And he was great, and he did win the Tony, but he was right out of school. No one had known his name before. And the play itself was so remarkable in its writing, in its staging, in its theatricality, that I don't think it was imperative to the average theater goer that they see it with that wonderful original cast member. I mean, people are going to see Hello, Dolly to see Bette Midler, primarily. Although I hear Donna Murphy's fantastic. But with something like The Curious Incident, I don't think they knew the names of the cast members, and it didn't matter. They just or War Horse.
Yeah, those are two very good examples. Well, Peter Bogyo, your book again is available.
It's available everywhere.
I was going to say available everywhere. Digital makes things awesome, and between Amazon and physical and digital,
Barnes and Noble, and on its own website, which cleverly is named the same as the book.
Broadway General Manager.
Manager.com.
All right.
And it's really about the business of show business.
Yeah, it's something people need to know about because it affects everything.
It affects
Without
everything.
the money, there is no art.
It's true. I mean, commercially, in the commercial world, you need to have some sort of balance between the art and a business plan that is viable.
Well, best of luck. Best of
Thank
luck
you.
with your upcoming shows, and
Thank you.
best of luck being scared at The Exorcist. And
I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
and it was a pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure as well. Thanks, Michael.
Talking the Trades.
The Drama Bookshop is in its 100th year celebration, and we have Eleanor Spiert, who is the buyer for the Drama Bookshop, and she does so many other things. She does copy editing and creates acting editions of plays for playwrights, but she also, as the buyer, knows a thing or two about how authors need to go about the process and what they need to think about with their titles and what they're writing, and then maybe what it takes to convince the buyer of shops to actually take that book. So we're going to kind of hit a little bit of all those issues. Eleanor Spiert, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
So the Drama Bookshop, this is quite a venerable institution. I love the Drama Bookshop.
Thank you.
And 100 years.
100 years.
And how long have you been a buyer?
I have been there for 16 years. I came in 2001. The owner now, Roseanne Seelan, has been there about 48 years. She married the boss in the 60s, and she's been there ever since. And when Arthur Seelan, who she married, passed away, she brought in her nephew, Alan Hubby, to be her partner. And that's his actual second incarnation there. He was there for about 10 years in the 1980s. And then he came back on, I think, in 2000. And he's been there that long. So we've been working together. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the 100-year thing is kind of a pretty big deal. I can't imagine New York City without the Drama Bookshop.
How many
the theater
shops
scene.
are 100 years old in New York City?
And I seem to remember, I can't remember the specific details, but that it seemed a couple of years ago there was a pretty big scare that Drama Bookshop might not get to 100.
Right. I have to tell you, I was never worried about that. The shop is very stable, and it's a standard. It's not going anywhere. But we did have a very big ice dam break leak from the pipe upstairs one cold February morning, and took out a good portion of the front of the shop. It's storefront, so we had to close and fix very quickly, repair. We had a lot of help. Our fans, our customers, our base kept coming back and buying, asking if they could help, donating. Lin-Manuel Miranda put out a video. He's out there. He is a great fan of the shop, and we loved having him work there at the shop, writing In the Heights. And then we always checked. He would come in and with his hair growing longer and longer and longer for his role in Hamilton until it opened. And he put out several tweets and a video asking people to buy, because helping us would be a great thing to keep it open, and helping us would be buying the books. Any book.
Did you say he worked there?
No.
Oh,
well, he wrote.
he...
He wrote In the Heights down in our basement.
Oh, okay.
Actually, in the Arthur Seelan Theater, which is a black box theater that he used with Backhouse Productions and his team to write In the Heights. And then after that, they worked on Hamilton in another space.
Okay.
But he did put out the word, and his fans and followers came to the shop, wrote to us, called us, and bought like crazy. We also had the launch for Hamilton the Revolution, the book.
Oh.
It was so incredible of him to ask for the launch to be at the Drama Bookshop. There are bigger venues, but he asked for the launch to be at our shop. We had a line around the block. We sold something like 1,600 books in a day.
Wow.
Just that one book. And he came and he stayed the entire time. And he signed every book and said hello to every person. And that was fun. And it was great. And it showcased the shop. And that's what we do. We do lots of events like that as well. But the shop recovered. We're back, strong. And here we are at our 100-year celebration we just had a few weeks ago. It was wonderful.
And when you say the front of the building was damaged, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who know the shop and is worried about one of the animals who's always out front. The animal all right?
All the animals are okay. It just so happened that evening no animals were in the shop. It was too cold. But the cat that everybody knows, Mr. Humphrey, went home with Roseanne to live a nice, leisurely retired life. And we now have 2 dogs that come almost every day. We have a Spitz and an English Spaniel. So people like to come and just see the dogs sometimes.
Yeah. And my last student who came here with me last time, I try to bring a student from our program every time to get an experience to meet, went broke at your store. He walked in and came out with no money. So,
but once he gets the job from reading what he read, he will have money to live on.
Oh, he wasn't upset in the slightest.
Yeah.
He was
No, we have a multitude of items, and it's not just theater. The whole back of the store are plays, individual plays, acting editions and trade editions.
And a really good staff. I mean, like I was
an incredible staff.
Stocking our library now for the new program at a university, and I absolutely had to come to the drama bookshop. Got them to set the budget to come, shop in person, and great staff. Like I want plays that have a lot of women. Women's roles in them, and no question right away there was like 2 people in the thing. They were going, grab this plate, this plate, this. They just going straight to the plays, pulling them out of the shelf, stuffing in my basket. And,
it's an amazing staff. They read plays, the new plays that are coming in, and the traditional classic plays, so that we know what the characters are, what the settings are. When someone comes in and asks just that, they know where to go, and they're amazing. They're amazing, and it's a pleasure to work with them. And people call from all over the world for that kind of input, and that kind of help. And we have instructors who tell their students, go and get something for yourself. And these are sometimes fresh off the bus, acting students. And they come to us, and we have to walk them through and tell them new plays, classic plays. They haven't read some of the classics yet. And try to be as helpful as we can.
They told me I needed contrasting monologues.
Yes, and we have monologues, but we have a whole shelf of monologue books from several different publishers. And we do prompt the students to, even if they look at monologues, to always go and read the entire play, because then you have the context. And but we work with them. Whatever they need, we try to get them what they need. And it's not just plays. We have film students come in. We have film scripts and books about film. Books about directing, set design, makeup, puppetry. We have gift items. We have how to do business, directories of things for all the business aspect, and how to act, all the different methods of acting, improv, humor, voice, singing, tapes on for accents, and I'm going to miss a few things. But we have lots of things, all to do with the performing arts community.
All right. So then you yourself, I mean, looking at these things, also, you said offer a service, work for hire, to help playwrights convert their plays to an acting edition.
To an acting edition, which is different than a trade edition. And this I do outside of the shop, but with the full support of the shop. It's Spirit Publishing, just using my name, Spirit Publishing. SpiritPublishing.com is the website. And what I really enjoy doing is working with writers to get their plays in the proper format. It should be a completed play. They're ready to publish it, but it might not get picked up by other traditional publishers. I always urge them first to try that, but they have their protocols and parameters, and if they don't get picked up, they come to someone like me, and I put it in the proper format, and I have a lot of experience. I worked at Dramatist Play Surfers for many years as their publisher. I know about the business, so that's what I bring to the table. There are other self-publishers out there. Many of them, though, work on a percentage. I do not. I am a work for hire. What I do is I walk you through, I copy edit, I do the formatting, I get it out to you in an acting edition form, and the rest is yours. If you sell it, you make the money. If you get a production, you make the money. I will give you a hug, but I don't want anything else from you afterwards. I just want it to be done right, but it's a work for hire.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming by today.
Thank you very much.
It's only just up the block, actually.
Just up the block. Thank you.
Yep.
Curtain call.
That wraps up this episode. Again, just like to remind everybody, please share this around, tell people about it. We really rely on word of mouth. We don't really have an ad budget here, and I don't have time with my job to just sit constantly and promote on Facebook. It's hard enough for me to get this together. We got a brand new episode coming out next week. We're going to be doing one a week until I'm done. So we got 2 more. Yep. And remember, we're on YouTube, brand new, starting to put up the episodes as they come, and then I'll probably start uploading some of the past ones. It's hard to search right now because we don't have that many subscribers on our YouTube channel because we haven't really done YouTube content. So if you can subscribe, we need like 1,000 subscribers to name the channel Broadway Bullet in the header. So that would be really awesome if you'd search Broadway Bullet on YouTube and subscribe to our channel, even if you listen on a podcast server or SoundCloud. All right. So we will see you again next week. We got lots of great stuff for you, as always. And I'm looking forward to getting out and getting some more material for you again in May. Okay.